Earlier today, I sat down with Vice President JD Vance at the White House. We talked tariffs, immigration, the Democrats' new hero, Mahmoud Khalil. I even got him to react to the reported tension between Elon Musk and Trump's cabinet. And there's so much more. Here's part one of my interview with the Vice President. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for joining us today. All right, gas prices are down. It looks like inflation is easing a little bit.
Sure.
But you cannot turn on the television without hearing a business executive speak about the tariffs, the kind of whiplash on the tariffs, and some of the difficulty they're having in making long-term investments and projections because of this uncertainty.
Sure.
What can you do to reassure them that this is all going to settle out?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the president's been very clear. He wants to impose tariffs on foreign importers because he wants to bring investment and jobs back to the United States of America. So what I'd say to those business leaders is I think the president has actually been quite clear about what he wants to accomplish: build more in the United States of America, invest more in the United States of America, raise wages for workers in the United States of America, and you don't have to pay these tariffs at all. There is, as the president has said, a recognition that we have to accept, which is that, look, Joe Biden left this economy in a disaster. He ran the highest peacetime deficits we've ever had in this country. He left us with a significant debt crisis. And the president has come in and said, look, we have to accomplish a lot of things simultaneously. We have to bring down inflation, which I think we're making some good progress on. We have to actually ensure critical government services like Social Security and the military function for the American people. And we also have to force businesses to invest more, not overseas, not in Chinese workers, but in American workers. And I think we're doing all of those things. Rome wasn't built in a day, of course. This is not going to happen overnight. But I think that both businesses and workers are ultimately going to benefit from President Trump's policies.
But can you rule out the possibility, as Reagan faced in his first term in office, coming off a terrible economic calamity for the country, can you rule out a recession, even a temporary one?
Well, look, I think you never can predict the future, but I think the economy, the fundamentals of the economy are actually quite strong right now. And we'll see how this unfolds, Laura, but I think that by inducing more businesses to invest in American workers, by reshoring some of those critical supply chains, we are going to make this economy stronger over the long haul, and that is the president's ultimate goal. We have to remember, Laura, people forget 5 years ago, of course, we had the COVID crisis. And aside from the public health element of it, what it should have taught us, Laura, is we can't rely on communist China to make all the critical stuff. You had hospitals that didn't have medical supplies. You had businesses, manufacturing businesses, that couldn't get core raw materials because China was shut down. What the president is doing is changing 40 years of a failed bipartisan consensus in Washington, D.C. that has sold out American workers and destroyed the underlying economic strength of the United States of America. We're going to rebuild it. It's going to take a little time, but we are going to do it.
Does that include medical device manufacturing, which most of it really went to Canada? So all these great American companies from Minnesota and Midwest shot up there to Canada, lower prices, the companies like it, but American workers lost out. So how long would this transition period be to bring those types of companies, if that's the ultimate goal, back here?
Well, look, I think it's going to take time, right? Some of the stuff, you're already seeing factories that are adding shifts for American workers. That happens immediately. Some factories, it takes 18 months or 2 years to build a new facility. So it really depends industry by industry. But the basic thrust of President Trump's economic policies is if you invest in the United States of America, you're going to be rewarded with lower taxes, lower regulations, lower energy costs. If you want to build a factory in China, that's your right, but you're going to pay when you try to bring that stuff back in the United States.
Or Italy.
Yeah, and the president made this point actually in the visit with the Prime Minister of Ireland yesterday, that the European Union has in some ways been the worst on American workers and American industries of anybody. They're imposing ridiculous tariffs. They say that they're our most important ally. And of course, we care about European security, Laura, but they don't treat us like an ally when it comes to economics. They actually hammer American consumers and American workers in the process. The president, the thing that underlies all this, Laura, is of course a defense of the American worker, but a recognition that we're not going to take unfairness anymore. If Europeans do something to us, we're actually going to fight back economically. For the first time in 40 years, we have a president who's standing up for America's people.
Your hometown, Ohio, destroyed. Akron, all these wonderful American cities, totally just kicked to the dirt for decades, and all those people were told, learn to code, do other things, and now it's going to be a difficult period. How long do you think that transition period will be?
Well, again, Laura, I think it really depends on what kind of industry, what kind of factory that we're talking about. I mean, you're already seeing instantly some factories, especially in the automobile sector, who are announcing they were going to move to Mexico under Joe Biden. Now they're actually building capacity here in the United States. Some factories that are idle part of the time, they're turning on additional shifts. So I think sometimes it's going to take a while. Sometimes it's going to happen immediately. It really is a case-by-case thing. But the underlying trend is invest in America and you're going to do well as a business.
But the whiskey manufacturers, come on, they're screaming today because it looks like the president might slap some retaliatory tariffs on Europe. Europe came back to us and said, oh, no, we're gonna hit your whiskey. Trump then says, we're gonna up you. It's like a game of chicken here, a trade chicken, 200% on champagnes and wines to France. Now that will destroy the French winemaking business, but they've been really tough on our winemaking industry for years.
Well, that's exactly the point. Look, Europe doesn't have the cards here. As President Trump likes to say, when you have actually penalized American companies and American workers, as the EU has for years, we're actually fighting back for the first time. But Laura, we have a $1 trillion trade deficit. We absorb
largest
all
ever
of the terrible economic policies from all over the world, and the world expects American consumers to foot the bill for their workers and their businesses, and Donald Trump is flipping that on its head. We are not going to do this anymore. We cannot run an economy where Americans borrow, go into debt to buy things that other people make for us. We're going to make it in America. We have to.
There is so much written about DOGE, tension, cabinet secretaries, leaks coming out of meetings, which happened last week.
Yep.
Rubio standing up to Elon saying, love you, Elon, but this is my department, back the bleep off, essentially. And I've heard it from other people who've talked to me. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is dealing with basically eco-terrorism at his dealership.
That's right.
The president, comes out and buys a Tesla the other day. First of all, are you going to buy a Tesla too? Or is that just Trump?
I can't drive anymore, Laura.
Oh, you
I actually
can't
talked to the president about it. I said, you're going to buy this Tesla, you're not allowed to drive.
Or nice Dodge or nice Doge. So first of all, is there tension? Is it natural? And how do you kind of calm things down there?
Yeah, Laura, I don't think that there's tension. There's certainly disagreement from time to time. We're not going to agree on every single issue within an administration, but the president has been very clear. Elon's doing a great job, and obviously we appreciate what he's doing. Marco, I think, is doing an incredible job at Secretary of State. I had high expectations. I think he's actually exceeded those expectations. So the fact that you have a disagreement at a meeting, that does not mean that you have misalignment. It just means that you've got to talk about this stuff. We're not going to have an administration where you have a president who sits there at cabinet meetings asleep while his wife runs the cabinet meeting and nobody's doing anything. We're going to talk about issues, and it does annoy me that that leaked. I will say it was that story wasn't totally true, to be clear.
There were nuggets that were true.
We need to have conversations.
Yeah.
We need to be able to talk to one another and solve this stuff without some random staffer leaking it. I suspect that's what happened. We're going to keep on doing the president's business because it's the American people's business.
The concern that a lot of us have who've been in Washington for far too long, frankly, is that while a lot of these cuts are encouraging for efficiency, they're not going to be permanent. How do you get Congress to do what it is loath to ever do? Really cut spending.
Yes, you're right. Congress needs to get more serious about spending. I think the way that we make what DOGE is doing permanent is through what's called a rescission package. So a lot of the spending cuts that we've seen from DOGE, and I think it's well north of $100 billion, that's real savings. I think that number is only going to grow, is actually to get Congress to make those spending cuts permanent. That happens through legislation. That's something we're working with Congress on, actually, right now.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.